So I take this opportunity to welcome our first session, Dr. Prashanth. Okay, just let me give a quick introduction about Dr. Prashanth. So thank you, Dr. Prashanth, for joining the session.
My pleasure.
Dr. Prashanth, Dr. Prashanth is a founder of DBP Institute, has 25 years of information management experience with companies like SAP and Apple, and much more. Author of 3 books, very interesting books, and regular contributor to Forbes. He has trained over 4,500 professionals, and he is also an adjunct professor of IE Business School. He is recognized as a top data leader and influential tech leader. Okay, I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Prashanth to the audience. Thank you, Dr. Prashanth, and I will be very happy to hear you and learn from you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Prashanth.
Okay. Hey, Sheikhs, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my thoughts. Good morning, everyone, and glad to be with you and share my insights on how you can apply data and analytics in the world of supply chain. While this is my thoughts and my experience, I'm also keen to hear from you about what you see as well. So I want to make it kind of a dialogue rather than just talking about what I have seen in the industry. So this is about me, and you already heard. I don't want to go more into my profile. So this is what I have for you. So what I have done is, for the next few minutes, I've broken down the whole topic or the whole presentation into 3 major topics. The first one is get a quick introduction to supply chain analytics, build everybody to a common page. Number 2 is about how to make this happen. What are the building blocks you need to make supply chain analytics work? So we'll talk about this. And lastly, I'll take a case study of a project I did recently for a food distributor in Washington State in Seattle. I'll talk about that. And then we can have a summary and a quick wrap up and Q&A as well. So with this, let's get straight into the first topic, which is introduction to analytics. So what is analytics? So when you talk about analytics, there are varied definitions of the term data and analytics, including supply chain analytics. So let's look from the industry perspective. So if you talk about data analytics in an oil and gas company, these companies, all said and done, deal with market and commodities. So for them, data analytics is centered more on the market and commodities which they are managing. But on the other hand, if you look at retail and the CPG world, for them, the data and analytics is more about the products and the consumers. So on one end of the spectrum, you have somebody looking at data analytics at a more aggregated level. And on the other hand, we have a different industry sector, which is looking at data analytics at a more granular level, which is products and consumers. So that's at the industry level. Now let's look at the function level. So if you look at finance, for example, their definition of analytics is more centered around reporting. For instance, in Canada, we have IFRS. In US, we have GAAP. So we have different accounting standards for companies to produce the financial reports. So the CFO's office is looking at data analytics or reporting as one of the main objectives of data analytics. Fine. So if you look at supply chain, for example, for them, they have to satisfy the needs of the customer. For them, data analytics is more about service, it's about the consumer. So when we look at the stakeholders, we have finance, which is looking at regulators, whereas the supply chain is looking more at the customer. And lastly, the whole discussion becomes more complex when we put the tech vendors into the perspective. So I worked in SAP a few years back, or a long time back. And when we talk about SAP, their definition of analytics is all products and services in the entire data lifecycle, right from data capture, data integration, data science, decision science, you name it, SAP has a product. Probably at this point in time, I think they must be having over 200 plus product. Whereas if you talk to SaaS or if you talk to Click, for example, their definition of data analytics is more centered about ML, data science, and so on. So they don't do much about data capture or data integration. So overall, it's almost like 6 blind men looking at the elephant and describing the elephant in their own words. So if you talk to the people from oil and gas industry, their definition of data analytics is more about data capture, digitization, If you talk to a supply chain professional, his definition of data analytics is more about satisfying the needs of the customer or understanding the needs of the customer. If you talk to the technology vendor, if you talk to SAP, their definition of analytics is about managing the data in the entire data lifecycle, whereas SAS is more about looking at analytics mainly from a data science perspective. So when there are so many varied definitions or perspective of data analytics, what exactly is data analytics? So in my experience, what I have seen is working with many clients. So analytics is basically about asking questions to gain insights for making decisions from data to measure and improve business performance. So it's all about measurement and performance improvement. So if you don't believe in the concepts of measurement and improving your performance, you are not going very far with data and analytics. And the first step in the whole journey is, do you have good questions? So questions are the fundamental or the first step in the whole analytics journey. No questions practically means there is no analytics. And how do you get the answers for these questions or the insights from these questions is from the data which you have captured across different business processes and so on. So this is my definition of analytics. So when I talk to my clients, people say, hey, Prashanth, we want to do data analytics in our company. Should we go and implement Python or should we move our data to the cloud? I said, hold on. All those things are great questions. They are very valid. But the first thing which you need is to sort out your questions. What are the typical questions you have for which you are seeking insights for? And most importantly, why do you need analytics? If your objective is not to measure and improve business performance, you are not going very far in data analytics. Data is oil, data is blood, data is oxygen. They're all great things to talk. They're almost like buzzwords and metaphors. But the most important thing about data analytics is using data to measure and improve business performance. So typically, when we talk about measurement, I call this as a measurement continuum. How things move from the left side to the right side. How companies can improve the whole analytics process. In fact, I even wrote an article for SAP Insider, 12 key FP&A reports, which you can use it for improved business visibility. But looking at this picture, most of the companies are in the first three boxes on the left side. It's mostly about beliefs, assumptions, reactive checks, ongoing reports, and so on and so forth. Very few companies are on the right side of the picture, like they are doing very little work on the advanced analytics. Gartner did a study and they found that almost like 85% of the work that's happening in data analytics are on the left three boxes. Very few companies are talking about this. So when I talk to my clients, this is what I have a roadmap for them. So I say, let's start with the left side and move all the way to the right side, which is all about prescriptions and recommendations. So what are the benefits of data analytics? So if we talk about the benefits of data analytics, the first one is better decisions. So Harvard Business School did a study and they found this, Forrester did a study and they found about growth and so on. Opportunities for growth. Well, what's that? McKinsey, Yahoo Finance, Boston Consulting. I've got a lot of studies they have done and they found that this is what you're going to get by using data analytics. And lastly, about operational efficiency, which is about cost and mitigating risk. So there is also research from MIT and McKinsey. So a lot of companies have done work on data analytics and they found that this results in improved business performance. That means better decisions, better opportunities for growth and reduce cost and mitigated risk. But what is the story within supply chain? Within supply chain, Harvard Business School again has done some work and they found that there is going to be cost efficiency. Deloitte did a study and they found that 79% of the organizations which are high performing are enabled by supply chain analytics. Boston Consulting Group, Accenture. So the proof of getting value from data analytics is there. Companies have got results from data analytics and they are using data analytics for improved business performance. So what's the case for business supply chain analytics? So today you hear all these metrics and you say, hey, I want to go back to my work and start implementing supply chain analytics. What should I do? What should I look for? So this is what I have to build a business case for supply chain analytics. What is the sweet spot? What are the use cases for supply chain analytics? I have something called as a Rumsfeld matrix. As most of you must be knowing, Donald Rumsfeld was the Secretary of Defense in the United States. And this is what he came up with. Known unknowns, unknown knowns, and unknown unknowns. Basically, the 4 situations which you have to make effective decisions. So let's take the 4 situations we have in a typical insight-centric environment. The first one, I call it as the validation or the physics problem. What is it? You know something, data knows something. So if you're using data analytics to further validate this, there is very little value you are going to get. I'll tell you a small story about this. A few years back, I was consulting for an oil pipeline company. So there was a team of data scientists who were kind of busy, meetings here, that discussion, so on and so forth. So finally, after 3-4 months, the management was a little bit concerned. Hey, what are you guys actually doing? There's a lot of noise happening in this group. Can we have a call to see what exactly you have done so far? So we had this call, and I was invited as well. And in the call, they said, hey, can you share some of the work you're doing, with some of the insights you have about the work you have done in the last 3-4 months? So the team said, one of the interesting insights we have for you is if the viscosity of the crude oil goes up, the time it takes for the crude oil to move from point A to point B also goes up. For a minute, there was a pin drop silence. Is this really an insight? Do you want to spend 4 months on validating these kind of situations and say this is truly an insight? This is already known. So there is no point in confirming about the insights which we already know. So this is like a physics problem. So if you're doing data analytics on problems or things which are already proven, validated, there is no point in capturing data and doing data analytics. It's kind of, I wouldn't say it's a waste of time, but the value you're going to get is very little. Number 2 is the knowledge or the insights problem. So what is it? The data knows something, but you don't know about it. For example, you are in supply chain and you want to know the cost of acquiring this customer. What is the customer acquisition cost? You can get this from data and analytics. This is what a good use case for data analytics, which is an insight problem. You didn't know about this, and now I have an insight about the customer acquisition cost. The third one is assumptions. You know something, but the data doesn't know. Well, what does this mean? For example, again, I was working in a project, and the team believed that it was basically a food additives company, which is actually sweeteners, color, and all those things which you add to the food. So they said the price elasticity of demand for their products is highly inelastic. I said, oh my gosh, this looks very surprising. Today, everybody is concerned about health and fitness and so on. So you believe the sweetness and color and all those things is going to have, the demand is going to be high, price inelastic? That's surprising. Let's see what the data is going to say. But the data said completely opposite. This is where you have a good use case for data analytics. The data doesn't know, but you know something which you can confirm once again with your data analytics. And lastly, black swan problems. For example, COVID-19. Nobody had the data or the insights to tell us that this is what the impact or the size of the problem is. So doing analytics to predict when is it going to be the next COVID-19 is going to be kind of unrealistic. But that kind of discussions rarely happen in the business world. The kind of discussions that happen in the business world, which are very similar to the black swan kind of problem, is using data analytics to predict sales 15 years from now, or doing a strategy 30 years from now. That's kind of very theoretical. I was talking to somebody and they say they are part of a strategy team to design to work out a strategy for the bank for 2040. This is kind of a waste of time. So many companies, you don't even know what's going to happen in the next 3 months. So what's the point in designing a strategy in 2040? So overall, when you apply the Rumsfeld matrix, so there are 2 real use cases which you can apply, where you have the knowledge or the insight problem, or you have the hypothesis problem where you're validating the assumptions. That's where the true scope of data analytics projects come into the picture. So to know more about this, I wrote an article in Forbes about this. You can Google about the title, and you can put my name as well, and you'll be taken to the Forbes blog. So now this all looks interesting, Prashanth. Now, how do we make this happen? What are the building blocks? What do I need to get to implement supply chain analytics in my company? So overall, there are 4 major things that really matters in supply chain analytics. Many people think for data analytics, what you need is you need good quality data, and number 2, a great algorithms, like for example, regression, which is in Power BI or Tableau and so on. That's true. but you also need other two elements as well. What are those? Assumptions and ethics. The belief that there is going to be 100% quality data to do your analytics is rarely true. Many times the data quality might not be there. The availability of the data might not be there. So you have to make some realistic assumptions to go forward so that you can get good insights and make the decisions to measure and improve business performance. So let's go over these four key building blocks one by one. What are the sub elements you need within these components to make it happen? The first one is the data in supply chain. What is the data in supply chain? Overall, there are four kinds of data from a business perspective. The first one is zero-party data, which is all the data about your potential counterparties, about your prospects, the RFXs work which you have done, and all the data which you have captured pertaining to that kind of work is all zero-party data. This is the data which you have about your potential counterparties, but they are not really the ones we are doing business with. First-party data is all the data which hits the GL. For example, it could be your orders, it could be your contracts, it could be your invoices, it could be your remittances, all those things which directly or indirectly hits the general ledger. It is the data which you capture and manage to run your business processes. Second party data is the data which is managed by your partners to run your company. What does this mean? For example, if I want to buy a HP laptop, I go to Best Buy and I buy it. But all the data about me buying the HP laptop is managed in Best Buy's data centers or systems. If HP wants to know, they have to talk to Best Buy and get those information. Same with Sephora and L'Oreal's discussion. For example, if somebody wants to buy a perfume, they go to the Sephora stores and buy the L'Oreal perfume. But if L'Oreal wants to know how my products are performing, they have to talk to Sephora and get this information. Let's talk about the oil and gas industry. Shell gives a project to Schlumberger. Schlumberger does this project for Shell, and all the data pertaining to that project is managed with Schlumberger. If Shell wants to know that information, they have to talk to Schlumberger to get that data. So overall, second-party data is the data which your partners are managing for you. And lastly, the third-party data, which is all about the data products. So you can buy this data from third-party vendors. The good thing is somebody has curated this, captured the data, curated this data, and giving this data in a ready-made package for you. But the bad thing about third-party data is you are inheriting the risk associated with this data, because you never know what has happened to the data, who has captured when, and so on. Cambridge Analytica came into limelight because of data and analytics. And it was that data, the third-party data, which they got from Facebook, which ultimately resulted in the company's collapse. They didn't manage the data well. So overall, food for thought for all of you. So when you go back to work after this conference, most of you might be just working on the first-party data. Good, congratulations, that's great. But very few companies are working on the other three types of data: zero-party, second-party, and third-party. In my experience, I've seen that those three types of data is about 30 to 40% of the data footprint, where not much attention is given. So spare a thought about that data, which you can bring it for your data and analytics. So the first one which you need for data analytics is the complete data footprint in your organization. So where does this data come? The good thing about supply chain is the money which can flow from one side, material which can flow from the other side, but data is constant. It is there everywhere. The zero-party data is there from suppliers to the consumers. And of course, there's the first party, second party, third party, and third party data as well. So if you look at the complete supply chain processes, whether it's record to report or procure to pay or order to cash, data is there in each of the business processes. So you can find these four types of data in every business processes or activities which you are doing within supply chain. The second one is the second building block for analytics is the algorithms. So overall, you can classify these algorithms into four major building blocks. First one is descriptive analytics. What happened? Diagnostic. Why? Why did this happen? Predictive. What will happen? And prescriptive. What are the factors that will make it happen? So let's take a simple story about these 4 types of analytics. Let's take, we have Nancy, who is the CFO, and Bob, who is the data scientist. Nancy goes to Bob and says, hey, Bob, what was our revenue in 2020? Bob looks at her question and he says, descriptive analytics. What happened in 2020? He goes to his ERP, pulls out all the invoices and says, hey, Nancy, in 2020, we made $350 million. Nancy says, this is good. Nancy says, why did we make just $350 million? Our target for 2020 was $360 million. Why did this happen? So this is an interesting question. So now Bob goes back to his desk. He conducts some experiments and so on, and he comes up with this reason to Nancy. Hey, Nancy, we made less money in 2020 because we were in the peak of COVID. Okay, good. So Nancy says, okay, assuming our business has changed, and the business has changed after COVID, and if you look at the situation in 2020, 2021, 22, 23, and assuming that the same business conditions continues in 24 and 25, can you tell me what will be our revenue in 2025? So Bob looks at that question and he sees that this is predictive analytics. He goes back to his desk, he does some regression work, and he comes back to Nancy and he says, hey, Nancy, assuming the business conditions are the same, would be the same in 2025 compared to 2021, 22, 23, and 24, we are going to make $375 million. Nancy looks disappointed. Nancy says, Bob, my CEO tells me that our target for 2025 is $400 million. Can you tell me what should I do to make it happen? Bob looks at Nancy's question. He thinks this is prescriptive analytics. He goes back to his desk, runs some optimization model, scenario planning, sensitivity analysis, many other techniques are associated with prescriptive analytics. He comes back to Nancy and he says, Nancy, if you have to make $400 million in 2025, there are 2 things which you need to take care. One is the price, other is the quantity or the SKUs. So if you increase this price and increase the quantity of SKUs that are being sold, we will make $400 million. So overall, if you look at the 4 types of analytics which are there, or the algorithms which are there, it is basically a conversation that's happening between the insight producer, who is Bob, and the insight consumer, who is Nancy. So it is like you give a question, I give an insight. From that insight, there is more question. Again, you get some insights. So it's like question, answer, question, answer. It's a continuous process that's happening between the insight producer and the insight consumer. So analytics overall is not like a one-time project. It's like a constant process. You want to measure and improve your performance of your company all the time. So it's like continuous process that's happening so that you get better. At every iteration, you get better and better. The third one is about the ethics. It refers to all these moral principles about the data management, right? From collection, processing, integration, and everything, so that you can better measure and improve your supply chain performance. So in my experience, what I have seen is there are 5 key building blocks which you need to think about in the ethics part of analytics. First one is data sensitivity, which is all about the security and privacy. How well you are managing the security and privacy of your data so that the right people can manage the data in the right way. Number 2 is about the model and the data drift. Every business is always in a state of change. It's always evolving. And data all said and done is a reflection of the past process. So data is catching up to what the business processes changes have been happening. So there is a drift, there is a change in the model which is happening because business is always in a constant change. So the second part of ethics is about managing the model drift so that the models that are used are reflecting the businesses in a realistic way. Biases are some kind of a preference. The inherent state of data is always biased, given that the data is a reflection of the past. You are capturing the data because there is a bias towards the way it's been captured. Many types of biases, right from availability of the data to the way you frame questions to the Hippo to IKEA bias. There are tons and tons of biases which are there. So overall, it is very difficult to eliminate the bias. What you can do is basically reduce it by better education and better management. Last one, fourth one is about data engineering, integrating the data from different sources which are in different shapes and forms so that you have one consistent way of interpreting the data. And lastly, taking care of the needs of the stakeholders. The insight needs of the C-suite is different from the insights needs of the manager. Insight needs of the manager is very different from the insights needs of the analyst. So making sure that the stakeholders' needs are taken care is also part of the ethical aspects of data analytics. Lastly, fourth building block is assumptions. There is nothing called as a perfect data. You need to assume something so that you can go forward, something like which is reasonable. Of course, when you assume something, there is always a probability of assuming of these assumptions. We always make some assumptions saying that, hey, we start this project and we assume that there's going to be good quality data. But when we start this project, we see that there is no data at all. We assume that there is senior management support for this project, but most of the senior management people are busy and very cold to this project. So you might be very excited with this, but the management, or because of lack of time or lack of resource availability, you might not get the right kind of traction and support. So we always make assumptions all the time. So assumptions are an important thing when we talk about data analytics. So this is a company where I work. So you can see this, I've highlighted all this, or I have stuck all those names. So I asked this person, what's your SG&A expenses for the last year? You see on the top, he says, we don't have this information. And trust me, this company has been running for the last 15 years. For the last 15 years, they have this marketing team, they have marketing budget, but they still don't know what's their SG&A expenses. So then I went to a Canadian bank, and I just Googled and to see what's the typical marketing expenses. So this Canadian bank said that, okay, this is what an average B2B company is going to find. So I just took about 3%. Then it came to about 17,000. So I went back to the marketing department and asked them, does it make sense? Do you think you spent about $17,000 last year? They said, yeah, this makes sense. So let's go with that. So you always make some assumptions because there is always the complete data might not be available for you to do your analytics. So these are the four key building blocks of supply chain analytics. Number one, data. Number two, algorithms. Number three, ethics. Number four, assumptions. So the last section is about a quick small case study. So this is a project which I work for a food distributor in Washington State. They were headquartered in Seattle. The CFO and the CEO, it was a small company, about $300 million. They said, these are the business levers we have. We want to know what are the insights which we have around these four areas: pricing, inventory or COGS, which is cost of goods sold, customer intimacy, and their business processes. So we want to know the impact on customer, financial, and operations. So we did a kind of an exercise where we talked to a few people in the company to got some key questions. Remember, first step in any analytics process is about questions. No questions practically means there is no answer. Today, we are in the world of ChatGPT and AI. So everybody has access to ChatGPT. And how do we get the value out of ChatGPT? By asking good questions. We both have access to the same tool. You might get one answer and I might get a different answer because you have used a better technique to ask questions compared to me. So asking questions is becoming a very vital skill today in the world of, in the data-centric world we are all in. So these are the kind of questions we ask them. And then we got a bunch of KPIs from them on these four key levers, which we discussed earlier. And from there, we look at what is active SKUs, quick ratio, the inventory turns, the customer lifetime value, and all those things. Then we produced tons and tons of insights. But in the interest of time, I'll just use one report which we presented. This was the one which caught the attention of the board and the CEO. He was very impressed with this slide. So what does this mean? So if you look at here, 1% improvement in price, volume, and COGS can help you get 8.2% in gross profit. This was one of the really an enlightening moment for the board and the C-suite. They find, oh my gosh, if we just increase the price by 1%, we are going to, and of course with volume and COGS, we are going to improve our profit by 8.2. This is terrific. I don't have to look at the entire SKU portfolio or every products which I have, just one of them, and this is what the situation is going to be. So overall, supply chain analytics is basically using data by asking the right questions to gain insights to measure and improve business performance. The goal of analytics is measurement and improving the business performance. If you don't believe in the concept of measuring and improving, there is no point in doing analytics. I see many people are using the health gadgets, the Fitbit, for example, on their wrist and their health and all those things. So they are all churning out a bunch of data, which is good. But what are you doing with that data? Are you using that data to improve your health? If the answer is no, there's no point in having this Fitbit and all these gadgets. So similarly, in the business world, it's good that you are capturing the data, but if you're not using the data to improve your performance, there's no point in doing data analytics. So when we talk about analytics, everybody thinks that, or most of them think, data analytics is about data science. Good. That's one part of the equation. There are other elements as well when we talk about analytics. It's about data capture and origination, data integration, of course, data science, and then decision science. Different types of analytics. The 3 or 4 major types of analytics are descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. And the 4 key building blocks of analytics are data, algorithms, assumptions, and ethics. So that brings us to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for attending my talk. And as a token of appreciation, this is my discount code on my 2 books, Data for Business Performance, which is the first book, and Analytics Best Practices, which is the second book. Analytics Best Practices was ranked the best analytics book of all time in 2022. So if you are interested, you can get it in Amazon or even Flipkart, or else you can go to my publisher's website and put this discount code of which you see in the bottom, and it will be shipped to your Indian address. So take a screenshot of this slide, and so that if you want to use this discount code, you can use them, or else you can go to Amazon and buy as well, or Flipkart and buy this book. Once again, thank you very much. This is one of my quotes in MIT Sloan Management Review. Companies have a lot of data, true, but success is not about data capture and you are just collecting the data. In fact, the more data you collect, the more difficult it is going to be, difficulty you will have in managing the data. It's about using it. So if you don't know how to use it, there is very little value you are going to get from data analytics. Again, I'm very active in LinkedIn. So please connect me or follow me in LinkedIn, or else if you're not in LinkedIn, this is my email ID. Thank you very much. Take care and stay safe.
Hi, Prashanth, can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, sir.
So now let's we have time. Okay, so let's take up some questions from the audience and discuss the details. So thank you, Dr. Prashanth, for a wonderful session. I know the depth of knowledge and the information, the experience, what you have in the data analytics is amazing. That is something which is definitely help supply chain organizations. So let us, I just to compile some questions. Now, a typical, one of the key problem is that when you talk about data analytics and data engineering and all those stuff, so only the larger organizations are doing it at the moment. Okay, so what is your advice for the mid-size and maybe a little smaller organizations, and how to start the data analytics journey, and what is the best way to do it in a simple step-by-step approach? Because everybody now with the generative AI, everybody is aware that technology-wise they cannot stay behind; they have to move forward. So this is something every company is aware of now. But the question is still they are just in exploring phase; they don't know. Okay, so can you explain how to do this for a small, mid-sized organizations, especially in Indian manufacturing supply chain companies' perspective, please, Dr.
Okay.
Prashanth.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I have consulted for some big logos like Shell and Apple and Whirlpool and those kind of companies. But at the same time, I have worked for very small companies which are about 3 to 5 million in revenue. But overall, Sheikh, whether you talk about the big companies or the small companies, the fundamental question they have is basically how do we get value out of data analytics? The size, complexity, and scale might vary for the big companies compared to the small companies and vice versa. But the fundamental question is, how do we get value out of data analytics? So this is a big question, but in the interest of time, I'll just give some pointers for companies to think about where they can start their journey. The first thing is identify the purpose. Why do you need data? So in my experience, purpose is the first step. So don't capture data because somebody told you data is oil, data is blood, everybody is doing data and all those things. Just think about why you need it. And typically in my experience, at an average, whether it's a small company or a big company, they need data for three major things. The first one is to run their operations better. Number two, for regulatory compliance. And third one, to better analytics or AI, which is all about measuring and improving performance. So let me give you a use case in the world of supply chain. Let's take a purchase order, for example. Why do you need a purchase order? A purchase order is an operational document. You need the purchase order because let's say I want to buy this 100 quantities of this pen. So I issue a purchase order to this vendor to supply 100 quantities of this pen. So I have an operational document saying that these pens are going to be delivered on this day at this location and so on and so forth at this price. So this is an operational document. But if something goes wrong between my company and the vendor, this purchase order, the same purchase order which served as an operational document, is also a compliance document. I use this purchase order to resolve the dispute between my company and the supplier to make sure that we are all in the same page. Over a period of time, let's say that today I bought 100 quantities of this pen, tomorrow 75, day after tomorrow 50, so on and so forth. So in a time of 1 year, let's assume that I've issued 1,000 purchase orders. Now, naturally, I can glean those 1,000 purchase orders and look at the patterns or derive into insights. And one of the insights could be the economies of scale. The more I order, the unit price of the pen is actually decreasing. Oh my gosh, this is really interesting. So what I can do, I don't have to have 25 vendors supply this pen. Instead, I will issue an MSA to 5 vendors. They can leverage their cost on transportation, on inventory management and everything, so that I can we both win-win. It's like a win-win situation for all of us. So in that way, I can use the data analytics to measure and improve performance. So this is a simple example. So overall, for all these companies, start with the first step, which is, why do you need data? In my experience, you need data for 3 things: operations, compliance, and analytics stroke AI. So that's number 1. Number 2, to improve those things, especially in the world of data analytics, what you need is KPIs. So when I go and do consulting projects, the first thing I ask my stakeholders is, what are the KPIs? So KPIs are one thing because they link the data to your performance. That's number 1. Next, number 2, from the KPIs, you also get to know about the culture of the company. If somebody gives me a list of KPIs, which is more centered towards the customer, I get a feeling, hey, this company is more about growth. It's about customers, so on and so forth. But if somebody gives me a KPI, which is more on cost cutting, cost reduction and everything, I get a perception that this company is more about cost reduction. If somebody gives me a bunch of KPI, which is on regulations, I feel that this company is more risk averse. So you get to know about the culture of the companies as well by talking about the KPIs. And third one is, data quality is not a one-time process. So when you make sure that data is a fundamental ingredient which you need for data analytics. So when you are capturing the data, make sure that you have the right skills, the right systems, the right process in place so that you get good quality data. Because if you have all those things in a very bad shape, the output is also bad. We have heard this: garbage in is garbage out. So the same thing applies here. So if you have untrained people, unskilled people, poor systems, poor processes, the output is going to be bad data, and bad data means bad insights, bad operations, bad compliance. Everything is going to be bad. So we can talk about it for hours together on what companies need to do. But overall, this is my take.
It's very important, Prashanth, to hear from somebody like you to understand the importance of data. So actually, typically, the organizations still, they are running into manual processes in Indian subcontinent. Okay, so the first step they look forward is to do all the processes to automate. Okay, and then they use this data once they have in a digital format, so they can do it. Now, one of the questions Mayur is asking is, so how to tackle the problem of converting hard copies to soft copies or the tables without much manual input? Yeah. So you would like to answer that because it's like so they have hard copies. The data, maybe it could be a purchase orders, it could be the goods receipts or bill of lading things. So, so this is something he's asking. We'll come to that question. Okay. One major challenge, Prashanth, here is companies still thinking that digitizing or digital transformation for their organizations is like an expense, not like an investment. So what is your advice for those companies?
So if you look at all the data which is there, there are many Fortune 100 companies or Fortune 1000 companies which were there a few years back, which are not existing today. And one of the reasons is they are not being able to change or adapt to the changing situation. So if you think that this is going to be an expense, you are not be able to sustain the competition. Today, we are in the VUCA world: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Things are so dynamic. The competition doesn't have to be you are from a competitor who is in India. It can be from anywhere in the world. So the competition is there everywhere. So you need to be prepared well so that your processes are running efficiently. You understand the customer needs in a much more quicker and a more adaptable way. Today, in the world of supply chain, we are not talking about customer supplier. We are talking about supplier to and see what are the risks they are having. So it's the world is kind of complex as well. The globalization has made things all the supply chains come together. For example, I think I put a picture where Amazon can predict what the customer wants even before the customer is ordering. And how is this happening? It's all happening because of data. It all depends on what you purchased in Amazon before, what you are searching, where you are going, and all those things. Like today, for example, I was talking to my wife, and I said there is over phone. I was talking to her over phone. I said that next week I might be traveling to Vegas for work. And after 2 minutes, I log on to Google. I see a bunch of ads about hotels in Vegas. So how is it all happening? So your devices are listening to you. You are what you do in your PC is being tracked, is tracked, and all those things. So there is data everywhere. So for companies which are for your question, like if they see digital transformation is expensive, think for a minute, like is it more expensive to stay in business or to go out of business? So that's what the fundamental question is. And the data can play. I'm not saying that data is the solution for everything, but data is an important solution to run your business efficiently.
Of course. Thank you, Dr. Prashanth. So data it's not expense. So you are doing the digital transformation but carefully and enabling yourself for the next generation competitiveness. Okay, so that is the most important thing. One more question, just answer the question: how to tackle the problem of converting hard copies? Actually, see, now the technology is in such a way. There is something called OCR, so objective character recognition, optical character recognition. This helps to read the formats if they are in a proper format. So they can read it, they can convert them into table structures, and they can store it. So this is usually almost all the softwares, very advanced softwares are doing it, especially in the purchasing invoices kind of thing. And our solutions in Data Labs India, so whether it could be a warehousing or it could be manufacturing, so we are including that OCR concept into that. Okay, that's something which we can do that. Okay, so Dr. Prashanth, so what is your advice for the executives? Okay, this is for the companies, you said very nicely. What is it for the executives? what is your advice for especially the very busy professionals? So how can they ask? They know that the questions also. Sometimes they have their questions in their mind, but they cannot articulate to the team. So what is your advice? Very quick advice for a few minutes for the executives.
So if for supply chain executives to embark on digital transformation, in my experience, I've seen that they can focus on three major things. The first one is build a culture of measurement and performance improvement. So to talk about, believe that the performance improvement is not like a one-time project, it's a journey. That's number one. Number two is improve the literacy of using data and analytics in the organization. So if people are not trained, people are not educated on using data and analytics, they would go back to their tribal knowledge to derive insights and to run their businesses for operations and compliance. Like Mayur was talking about all this manual processes. So if people are not skilled, like for example, I've seen in many places they have companies have implemented ERP like an SAP applications, but still many users don't use SAP. They still you are using their manual processes, emails, and everything for procurement activities. Then we have a back office which looks at their email and starts putting everything into SAP, creates a purchase order and everything. So if people are not trained, if, or the business users are not trained in using the data and analytics, again, it's going to be a huge challenge. So senior executives have to make sure that there is a budget, there is a support for their backing for these kind of projects. And last one, get working on good quality data. So today, the differentiator is not technology. The differentiator is data. For example, there is hardly any difference between different tech platforms you have, whether it's GCP or AWS or Azure or anything. The differentiator is going to be quality data. If you have good quality data, regardless of the platform you're using, you are going to get good output. So if you have bad data, even if you might have the greatest technology in the world, the output is still going to be bad. So technology is becoming a commodity now. So in that case, the differentiator is going to be good quality data. The reason why many retail companies fear Amazon is because Amazon has the data. So, or Amazon has the quality data. So for senior executives, I would say if you are embarking on digital transformation in the world of supply chain or supply chain transformation, focus on three things: build a culture within the organization that uses data for measurement and performance improvement. Number two, improve the data literacy, education levels of the company, and lastly, get good quality data and treat the data quality journey as a process and not a project.
Perfect. This is fantastic to hear. Data quality, it's basically a decision making. Okay, so you need good data for decision making. You need a decision support. Okay, from the data, whatever you have. Okay, so if you don't have that, all you have to go by your gut feeling and your thumb rules. Okay, so this will definitely create a problem one way or other. Okay, and especially if your competitor is using the data and getting the insights, even that like 2-3% of the edge in competitiveness will make a big difference going forward. Okay, so there is a huge competition. And one more question from Mayur, just extended question. Yeah, see, if you are converting the handwriting data into a database, so it's a process. Okay, so you have to start with the standard process, the standard template, and then you need to educate your machine learning algorithm to keep learning about the different variations, what you have in your handwriting, either it could be in a template or whatever. Then slowly, in course of time, your machine learning algorithm will learn all the things and then convert into JSON tables. Don't expect that if you have a different formats and then expect artificial intelligence or machine learning to do, no, it will not happen. You need to teach them, just like we teach ourselves. We need to teach it. Okay, then it will have a problem. Many companies are doing this, by the way. They're converting handwritten and invoice documents using OCR to the data, and because there is so many invoices. Okay, so our kind of token documents. they're converting it successfully and they're using it. So you can also do it. We can discuss more on this as we go on. If you have offline, we can post your questions and then we can get your answers. So Dr.
Perfect.
Prashanth, thank you for joining. And any final thoughts? You have another 2-3 minutes. Final thoughts. I know it is very, very late for you. So it must be 10 a.m., 10 p.m. for you?
No, it's 11:30, almost 11:30 p.m.
Okay, so it's a time to go to bed. And any final thoughts? And then we
No,
can
but but one final thought which I have is, it's is not just to capture data and store it. If you just capture and store the data, there is going to be severe repercussions on cost, on carbon footprint, on risk, on branding, and everything. So use data and capture data only if you need it. Don't just think that I'm going to capture data because cloud is cheap and all those things. Nothing is cheap. It's going to be very cost expensive, risky in the long run. So basically manage your data well. The more data you have, you will have more problems actually. So make sure that you have a great system of managing data. So data is an asset only if you know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it, it can become a liability, which is very hard to get rid of.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, Dr. Prashanth, thank you very much for joining and have a great evening and take care very much. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. See you, sir. All the best to everyone. Take care. Thanks for your time. See you. Bye-bye.